Hello and welcome to Social Code Podcast. I'm Ayush and I'm with my friend Pranav. Hey Pranav, how are you?
Hey Ayush, welcome everyone. Quite excited to be here and get into our
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes, we are under the broad umbrella of education. Today we're talking about life skills. Last week we talked about getting jobs and how to become basically trade skills, right?
Hmm.
How to make a living and those topics. But I've seen that many people who are making a successful living, they're still making poor life choices, right? In terms of so simple things like they're not physically fit, they're not financially fit, right? They take on too much debt, credit card debt, and then they end up repaying, spending a lot of money on repaying that debt. They're not happy in life. They're not keeping up, with the relationships as well as they would want to. So that is an aspect of our life, I think, which is perhaps more important than the traditional than the trade skills or the money aspect of our life. Our education system, though it has its own problems, it does do a fair enough job of teaching the trade skills. I don't think it does I don't think it even attempts to teach life skills. Probably, I don't know. I know I had like a moral science class in school once, I think, in one
Hmm.
of the years. But apart from that, I haven't like seen any a system, right? It's we're talking about the education system. There is no system to teaching life skills to students, the things that they will need at different stages of their lives, right? Decision making, critical thinking, independent thinking, uh, you know uh, the ability to think for yourself. There's a huge problem right now of herd mentality, of people not thinking for themselves, just listening to the talking heads on news channels and borrowing their opinions from them. And then that increases the tension in society, that increases friction between factions in society, and creates unrest. So that's like the broad range of topics that I want to talk about. The problems that exist in society, and like how can the education system solve these problems. What do you think, Pranav? First thoughts.
Very exciting. I think first I would want to ask and figure out, walk me through what you think are the life skills. So you started listing something of critical thinking and uh, not borrowing decisions or thinking by themselves.
Yes.
It might be useful to understand what are these things. And then you mentioned you had only one class on moral science. So
Yes.
is it also about values? So is it just thinking, or is it having an understanding of what your values or ethics are and how you interact with them? Uh, and then, like, based on that understanding, I would want to then understand. So just like last time we were talking about getting a job and skills that are more specific, trade skills. So they are specialized skills. So those are expected to be that you will go for after your high school. You are going to either a trade school or an engineering, medical, some science
Right.
stream or some art stream. So like you're spending 3 to 4 to 6 more years to get better at a specific trade or a specific
Right.
thing. When you talk about life skills, are you thinking that they should be taught in school to up to 10th or 12th grade students? Or are you thinking that it should be something that is at the higher level? And are you thinking that it has to be through the schooling system? Like we started making the distinction between a schooling system and an education system, which has other places.
Yes.
So
Sure.
I don't want to preemptively jump to where it comes from before understanding what
Yeah.
is it that we are actually, what kinds of skills are we talking about? Because if we're talking about finance skills, teaching finance, personal finance around debt and all those things
Yes.
might not be the same to a sixth or eighth grader as it would be to
Yeah.
a 21-year-old who is
Sure.
towards the end of their bachelor's degree.
Sure.
Uh, so,
Sure.
so, so, like, let's dive into. this is very close to my heart, because I think very deeply of that everyone should have an ability to reflect on their own decision making, and
Yes.
if they can inculcate that as a skill over time, it has a
Yes.
compounding effect, because the more you do it, you not only get better at reflection, but you also get better at building your own life skills over the
Right.
years.
Right.
So this is very close to, and I see the value of having life skills. That said, I want to first
Right.
hear what are life skills that you have in mind.
So it comes down to making good decisions in life, right? Yeah, it's a broad term, but let's get specific. Okay, let's say we all know how to get healthy, right? Eat right, work out regularly. Like simple. Good health, good fitness is basically about two things: eat, watch what you eat, and work out regularly. But so many of us still fail to do it, right?
Mm-hmm,
We still are unfit, unhealthy. Either we are too like we are overweight or we are underweight. We don't have enough strength, and we know that that poor health impacts our life. Like we cut down 5 to 10 years of our life because of poor health. Right, it
mm-hmm,
impacts our longevity as well. We suffer more from more diseases, more sickness. So our daily quality of life is also impacted.
mm-hmm,
So this it just seems so obvious that anybody who can think for themselves and who has good decision making skills will ultimately end up being very fit or being very healthy. Why is that not happening right now in society?
mm-hmm,
uh, our obesity levels are at the highest right now, right?
mm-hmm,
More people are dying of eating more than eating less. Of like less people are dying of hunger now, and more people are dying of diseases which are happening because of eating too much or eating the wrong kind of food, or not taking care of your health.
mm-hmm,
Right. So that is it. So health is like one example. The other example, like talk about, is financial health, where we
mm-hmm,
take on too much debt, or we don't invest our money, we don't save enough. Right. The savings rates are at the lowest that there have been ever in history. Right.
mm-hmm,
Uh, uh, and we make poor financial decisions, end up repaying for them for our life, for the rest of our lives. It's very similar to the physical health problem. The financial
mm-hmm,
health problems are very similar, the overlapping in that
mm-hmm,
sense.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, so like this is a pattern that's happening. Bring that to relationships. The same thing happens with relationships, right? We stay in toxic relationships and not not pull the cord, not cut the cord, or we're too afraid to commit to anything, to a person, or
mm-hmm,
we don't talk to our parents, or if you are a parent, you don't probably take the right decisions for your child, and how you should be bringing them up.
mm-hmm,
And I think like all these three dimensions, or all these three areas, there is a pattern of poor probably decision making that comes out.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do you think? Like and again, on the borrowed opinions thing, that happens at larger society scale. Like, is the vaccine important or not? Are masks important or not? We saw this the last 2 years. There were debates about whether we should be wearing masks or not. I mean, what is the point of having that? Like it's so crazy, right? There are issues around gun control. There are issues around abortion. There are issues around in India. There is female feticide, right? The crime numbers are at an all time high as well. So I've like there are so many different things that can be basically captured into an essence that if people had better life skills, if they had better decision making skills,
Mm-hmm.
if they knew how to deal with their life better, all of these problems would probably not appear so much in our society these days. What do you think? Does that make it a bit more clear? Probably, I don't know.
Yes, that helps. I think so. For one, we are not talking about whether a decision is a good parenting decision or whether a decision is a good health decision or a financial health decision.
Yeah.
What we're talking
Yeah.
about is the ability to take better decisions in
Yes.
a current situation. So while I'm happy
In
to have
whatever
on this discussion,
circumstance you fall into, like it is
right,
really dynamic. What is a good decision today can be a bad decision 10 years from now,
right,
and vice
right,
versa. Yeah.
right. So we are not talking about philosophies of parenting or philosophies of
Not at all.
fitness
No,
and all
not
of those
taking a
things.
call on what's good or what's bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to make that distinction that we are not talking about
Yeah.
specifics in this that is happening, but we're talking about in
Yes.
general the ability to make reasonably well judged decisions. So wearing a
Yes.
mask versus not wearing a mask can be a controversial decision, but the situation might call upon whether wearing a mask now is a good decision or not, and that is something we can talk about. So, so part one is being able to take well reasoned decisions. Part two
Yes.
that you bring up is there is there seems to be an underlying tone or an underlying assumption around we want to focus on the individuals to be able to take better decisions. So the
Hmm.
life skills are missing from the people.
Hmm.
One way I want to push and learn how you think about this is any situation is actually never a singular, like there is always two sides, right?
Hmm.
Any situation is created by the push and pull of two sides. So in
Okay.
this one side is the individual. They should have better decision making for let's choose healthier foods, let's choose healthier credit habits or those kinds of things. But then if I were to take the stance of all of these individuals and say, of course, I would like to take better decisions, but why am I being served poor choices, right? Why is there so much unhealthy food that is cheap that if I were to take a financial decision that I can only afford this food, or if I'm hungry, then the
Yes.
quickest food available is unhealthy food. When I need to buy something, why is there an expectation that I alone should make a good credit choice while all the creditors are pushing me bad financial products? Uh,
Hmm.
right? Because you go click on any button and anything that is more than some number of rupees or dollars, you can immediately see that, buy now, pay later. A bunch of things come in. And I'm
Yes.
not saying that they're all bad. I'm saying that is the responsibility for having a healthy and financially and physically and relationally healthy society in the way you've been talking about it seems to be solely the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the individuals. While the world is trying to push them, the society at large, businesses or whatever, is trying to push them in the other direction. So um, it is easy to talk in the first person perspective, and it, the most prevalent perspective now is become individualism. That is the responsibility of the individual.
Hmm.
50 years, 100 years back, I would say responsibility of the individual might work well because the societal pressures were not at the same level.
Hmm.
The advertising and marketing was not relying on very strong cognitive and attentive, uh,
Biases.
was not trying to leverage your mental weaknesses to sell you something,
Yes.
to get you to do certain things, right?
Yes.
So one way of thinking about this is, and I'm happy to have that conversation as well. So right, like, but I want us to think about that where does the responsibility lie, right? So I'm
Hmm.
happy to talk about individuals having good decision making. So just
Hmm.
we should not completely also throw the responsibility on the society that, oh, you should not give us bad choices. No, life will give you bad choices.
Yes, yes,
Part of it
yes.
is society gives you bad choices. But the game should not be rigged, perhaps, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so part one is good decision making if you're thinking of the individual. Part two is how much of this is still, let's say, you are a fairly good decision maker, right? Have you
I would
not
like to think so.
had, right, like, and have you not made poor health choices? Have you not made poor,
I have.
right? And so like, why did that happen?
No, so that's how I learned, right? By making poor decisions, I learned to not make. But there should have I would have liked a formal, training in decision making, probably. Where I
So
would have been told that these are kind of choices you'll have to make, and this is the right heuristic that you should be using to make those choices. And just one point on the society pushing thing, it's a bit like Big Brother esque thing that that individuals are. So this is the other end of the argument, where Big Brother controls everything and individuals don't have the power to act for themselves,
mhm,
which is again as problematic as like hyper individualism is, where everything lies on the individual. So we're
mhm,
somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, and I think that's where the education system can come in as an antidote to everything else that's wrong in society
mhm,
probably today.
mhm, mhm,
And it can work to, if you just figure out ways to prepare individuals for the challenges. Just tell them that these are your biases, and this is how they are going to be used against you in over the next 50 years of your life.
mhm,
And this is how what you should do about it. When
mhm,
you look at a marketing campaign telling you, trying to sell you something which is very desirable in the moment, but it gives you a debt of for the next 30 years, that's probably the wrong thing to buy in that moment. So
mhm.
there are like 100 things it's a circular logic, right? If you fix society, then we'll not like I think the education system is probably the one way to fix society, because it's circular. Society is wrong, so education system is wrong. Education system is wrong, that's why society is wrong. We have to pick like one point in the circle and start fixing from there.
Mhm.
And I think probably the education system is the right place to do it.
So
Uh,
I think,
yeah.
in principle, I agree, but I would say there's a lot of storytelling techniques being applied here, which you and
Okay.
I are susceptible to. So the wording of, if the society does better for you, that is on the spectrum of Big Brother. So Big Brother has a negative connotation, right?
Yes.
I would ask you, how is that any different from what we are talking about as the education system? Why is that not called Big Brother? If the education system tries to tell you how people will try to take advantage of you, uh, using these techniques, how is that any different from whatever you are
So
saying is Big Brother?
probably because the education system comes in at a very early stage in your life, when you're still, uh, you're not an adult. You're still learning. You're in the you go to a school, or you need an education system to teach you stuff. Right? That's the point of an education system, is to teach you stuff. Uh,
No,
and
but
and parents make an active choice to send their children through the education system. Uh, so yeah, I mean,
so
how do you
the
think like
question, no, I'm not disagreeing. So like, I think here's the bit. I teach in a business school now, right?
yeah,
And one of the classes I'll be teaching next week will cover the topic of judgment and decision making. So what are our cognitive
right,
biases? What are these? So it
yes,
is part of the teaching, right? But it is part of a teaching that is focused on people who are the business major. So this is not until your
yes,
high school. This is folks who are in the business major, who are
yes,
choosing to pick a topic like, please teach me something about, like, I want to spend 6 months learning about how to lead individuals and teams, how to lead
yes,
negotiations. So I talk about what are the prominent strategies of influence. How can you exert them? How can you deflate or diffuse these strategies when they're being
Yes.
applied to you? What are the ethical challenges that you have to think about as you are either applying them or are on the receiving end? So I don't
Right.
think that the education on these topics does not exist. The question is when and who is
Yes.
being the target of. So as you say, you mentioned that the students are sent to uh, s- mm, schools, and they do this. That is the first exposure that they get. I would say no. They're first exposed to all of these societal pressures of they are watching television, they are watching their cartoons,
Yeah.
their parents are also behaving in a particular way, and if the
Yes.
society at large or parents at large are not free thinking, and
Yes.
they don't want to promote critical thinking or independent thinking, and they're like they rule by control, then the student is a child first, then a student later, right? So if they're baselines, so here's the difference that I draw between life skills or behavioral knowledge from technical knowledge. In
Right.
technical knowledge, the concepts are difficult, they are out there, and you can get trained in them, and it might be intellectually challenging, but it is easy because for most cases you don't have a baseline understanding of what it means to have general relativity or differential equations, right? You're not
Hmm.
entering the classroom in your 8th standard or 10th standard having pre-existing knowledge of this is what differentiation looks like, or some
Right.
crazy technical construct, or this is how you build a bridge, whatever you want to
Right. Right.
think about.
Right.
But with behavioral knowledge, especially of thinking, mm, decision making, influence, spending money, or buying things, or
Yeah.
what are we eating, all of us are inherently, by the virtue of having spent time doing, living our life, we are at some level armchair psychologists and armchair astrologists. We have underlying
Yes.
hypothesis of how this works.
Yes.
I would go as far as saying that most of our biases are also cemented in place because we have these ways of or mental models of how X works.
Hmm.
And the concept of how persuasion works, or how power works, or how hierarchy is used to influence
Hmm.
things, or how authority is used to signal and do these things, or how storytelling devices are used to convince you on certain things, and why you should have a 99.99 and not a 4, like all of those things, right,
Yes.
are already built into the students who's coming in. So the concept of why it is wrong or how it can go wrong is very simple,
Right.
but the implementation of it, of how you apply it, that is
Hmm.
very hard. So in technical work, the application is fairly straightforward because there is an objective, or like
Clear objective and clear steps you can follow.
right,
Yeah.
and there is a reasonable right way, and the underlying laws are not changing. Like thermodynamics is not changing as quickly,
Yes.
or your laws of motion are not changing as quickly, and your physics is not changing as quickly. Uh,
Yes.
but in behavioral sciences, how people behave is very much dependent on their current state, their current emotion, their personality,
Yes.
their
Yes.
the culture they come from, the context that you're meeting and talking. Let alone that, if you're talking, the two of us talking will be very different when there is another person and there's a third person. So the dynamics
Yes.
between three people is very different from our dynamics between two people. And
Yes.
in all of this, all of these different mechanisms are going on. So it, while it may seem non-trivial to teach good
Mm-hmm.
decision making,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it is not. A big chunk of time has to be spent in giving a student some level of generating self-awareness of what do you think this works like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think it works that way, right? Because you are unconsciously making decisions, and you're unconsciously applying mental models that you've picked up
Mm-hmm.
over your life. And
Mm-hmm.
just like you were talking about healthy choices, we know very easily that knowing that cigarette smoking is bad or alcohol
Yes.
consumption is bad. Agreeing to that does not mean you can stop doing it, right?
Yes.
So that is the biggest chunk of the concepts might be simple to understand. The behavioral application is not. So no amount of theoretical knowledge survives a very strongly held experienced belief. So if I believe that the world is out there to get me, no amount of theoretical knowledge that people are not out there to get you. It is just variations, right? It's not going to, like, there has to be intrinsic ability to execute on certain types of decisions,
But
to
there
be
are
willing to change your
de-addiction
life path.
centers.
Yeah.
There is Alcoholics Anonymous, right? There are mechanisms that society has built to then remedy these problems, right? Once there's somebody's already fallen into these problems, like there
Mhm.
are obesity clinics, that people can go into, and so there are mechanisms the society has already. So instead of doing the remedial work, why don't we do the prevention work? So that people don't fall into them.
Mhm. Ab-
And to the point about parents, it's again like parents are also a product of the education system. So it's still circular,
mm.
right? We still
So
have to like,
I
yeah,
would now push you on that exact thing, that you are making some false circularity. We are saying that the parents are also part of the education system. I'm saying no, the education system for a kid, you can be like, oh, they are only exposed to education. No, parents are exposed to the world out there. The education system
yeah,
is only a percentage of it. So they are not ruined because of the education system, right? They are ruined because of the society at large, of which the education system is a small part,
I agree.
right?
My
Uh,
point is that we fix society at large uh, by fixing the education system, and by probably tearing it apart and including the education system at different parts of a human's life,
mhm,
wherever he or she needs it.
mhm.
Uh, uh, you know, uh, and that's how, once we do that at scale, that's how we fix society. uh, because uh, uh, otherwise fixing society, like, how would you fix this, right?
Okay.
Because everyone who is
So,
coming into society is already already has these problems.
so for
uh,
one, I like I am I'm hard pressed to not just ask you questions, but walk you through some scenarios. Like
yeah,
in general, I would have asked you questions, but it seems like it is not going anywhere. So let me walk you a scenario.
yeah,
It seems to me that you have a very industrial model of the society. So while you have connected one end to the other, you have a very
yeah,
assembly line model that, oh, a kid is born, they go to the education system, then they go out in the world, right? And then
yeah,
whatever they do, all of that has an effect back into the education. And you have this
right,
like very assembly line, linear,
sure,
circularly connected, but linear model of
sure,
life. And the reason I'm saying that re-examine that thought process is because,
okay,
let's say, so here's the thing, let's say we want good financial education
hmm.
for our youth, and we make a
Yes,
mandatory class in high school that talks about, you know we are dedicating 2 hours per week for 6 months or one semester, whatever that is, maybe, on good personal education.
hmm.
All right. Now, given how you understand the world works, the question I'm going to ask you is, what will be the syllabus, and who will decide what the syllabus is? And do you think
Yeah,
it will serve the purpose of teaching them good education, or will it become that these people will become better consumers? Because think about it this way, like I think we've covered this part of the conversation
yeah,
before, that the education system currently is designed. So this may be in the work season on
yeah, yeah.
how the society at large chooses the education system, and it is designed to essentially generate humans that can serve the society. Currently, the
Hmm.
society needs consumers
Hmm.
and workers who are at a certain level of intellect, but not higher and but not lower.
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
consumers who will keep the economic engine churning, right? So everything that
Right.
happens in the education system is to mold the student into a good consumer and a good worker.
Mm-hmm.
You saying that, oh, we should fix the education system is essentially then like you're basically pushing the problem away. The hard part of fixing the education system is not figuring out what is good education,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I am happy to have the conversation about good life skills, but that is not the same conversation as how do we fix the education system.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
if the conversation is about how do we fix the education system, we have to understand how does the education system change and who has the power to change it, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to mix the two conversations. I'm happy to have either
Yes.
one of them, but we have to be careful about saying that, oh, I need good financial understanding. For every human should have good financial understanding. Every human should have good decision making around health, around relationship.
Yes. Yes.
And what would that look like? When would that happen ideally? So I'm happy to have that ideally conversation, but that should not be
Right.
mixed with that it has to be in the education system, because without fixing the education system we cannot fix everything else. That is a
Right.
different conversation which brings up different
Sure.
problems. It's not as simple as like, oh, here's the puzzle pieces that fit one next to
Sure.
the
Sure.
other. We fix
So,
one.
anyways, like doing this is a thought experiment that in an ideal world, how should our education system look like, right? So,
Mhm, mhm,
uh, uh, yeah. So, completely agree. It's way more complex than it seems, and we don't have to go there. Like that's a very it's a beast. It's a different beast of a conversation that we
mhm,
probably should have some other day. But yeah, but how do we do this? Let's say designing an ideal education system, and this is beyond a schooling system,
mhm,
right? It's not just about schooling. It's about everything. How society teaches like how parents teach a student, and
mhm,
how
mhm.
and the schools. So school is just one part of it. Then how do we teach these life skills
So,
to
so
students?
now that we are focused on like one aspect of the problem, now let's dig deeper into and let me ask you, across these good decision making process on health and education, on financial
Finance, yeah,
education, and relationship and
relationships,
all
yeah.
of these other things, what is the commonality? What is the human level life skill that you're trying to teach? Is it critical thinking? Is it
Yes, I think it comes down to critical
creative
thinking. The big,
creativity? Is it independent thinking? Is it like a mush of all of those? Like, so like, let's not put
yes,
labels. Let's also define what is it that we want
yes,
them to learn,
yes.
or
So
all of us to learn.
at the base level, it's critical thinking, the ability to know your own biases, and the ability to rationally weigh options at every stage of your life, and figure out that this is a bad choice and this is a good choice.
Hmm.
That and there's plenty of literature out there already on this, just
Hmm.
not like it's just that it's taught with the wrong intention, like you just mentioned, like, it's taught in B schools with the you use this word where you said that how to exert influence, right. While I would like to like everyone to get a class where they would know that they are being influenced by somebody,
Hmm. Hmm.
right, or the other end of the spectrum, where not B school, not management and not founders and CEOs are using how they can use influence, but rather how consumers can better deal with influence than somebody's trying to influence them,
Hmm.
right.
So,
uh, yeah,
so like a point of correction. I think you picked up
sure,
only how to exert influence. I said there are three parts to
yeah,
that:
yeah.
how to exert influence, how to diffuse when somebody's exerting influence on you, and
Right,
what are the ethical
right,
challenges when you are on either side of it.
right,
So
yeah,
exerting influence is not a
right, got
bad
it.
thing. Your parents
Sure,
exert
sure.
influence on you all the time, but
Yes,
they
yes,
have
yes.
some values around it. So it's not just that you're teaching
Sure.
one side of the economics. It- Part of the job of teaching future leaders is teaching essentially what power you wield, how it
Yes.
can be misused, how it can be used well. And when you are out there, if you are getting trained to be a leader, then you are more susceptible to be both on the giving end as well as on the receiving end of these kinds of
True,
techniques.
true. With
So,
great power comes great responsibility,
I,
and we teach
right,
that.
right. So
Yeah.
as long as, so, and this is where I said that maybe 50, 100 years back, the entire tribe didn't have to worry about getting influenced by somebody else. Uh,
Hmm.
what was necessary was the king and people in their court were supposed to be
Yes.
more trained into this, because the opposing camp, or whoever is your enemy, will try to infiltrate your
Hmm.
assembly,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
your like king's court. So, but
Hmm.
the for the vast majority, all of the other people who live in your kingdom were not subject to this. Now we don't
Hmm.
live in that world. So now it is
Hmm.
very important that we teach everybody how to diffuse uh, influence or marketing techniques
Yes.
or
Yes. Yes.
selling techniques, because it's not a B2B world anymore. It is a B2C
Yes.
world, right? And so I'm not in disagreement with you. And
Yeah.
the question that we should be pushing for is the critical thinking piece, as you say. Can I analyze? Can I understand? I would say, okay, so let's get deeper into it. What are we really
Hmm.
talking about? What analyze? What does it mean to
Let's say
systematically analyze? What does it mean to?
let's say I'm about to buy a house. Okay, because
Mhm,
society tells me there's peer pressure, everybody around me is buying a house.
mhm,
uh, right, I need to know how much money I have, how
mhm,
much money I need to borrow, what my income levels are, and will like what is the interest rate that I'm getting on a regular home loan, housing loan that we get. If I'm not able to make up for that, if the money is still short, then I should probably not buy that bigger house. Like people, what they do beyond their home loans, people take on more like personal credit loans, and which are very very high interest rates, right?
mhm,
Just to make up for a larger house that you want to buy. Or people go on foreign trips and world they take a world tour, but they take it on personal credit,
mhm,
and then they pay for it over the next 5 years.
mhm,
Right. So these are like these are like very poor. I think poor financial decisions,
mhm,
uh, where somebody like doesn't need. They don't. Uh, there are different types of credits, right? Most people don't even realize that are getting a housing loan is way cheaper than getting a personal loan. But it's just that the person who is selling the personal loan is making it so enticing and so easy for you to get it in within an instant,
mhm,
that you are more likely to fall for that when you need a small amount of money, or when you need quick money somewhere.
mhm,
So I should be able to like rationally put that down on a Google sheet and calculate that, okay, this is my budget, or this is how much I make today. If I take a loan of X amount at Y% for Z years, then this is what I'll have to pay every month to pay it back. Right? Can I afford that? Do I think that for the next 15 to 20 years my income is going to keep rising? That's too much complex data inside that we have to process, and like we need the ability to think through and think long term, and not think like instant gratification. Again, we talk a lot about delayed gratification, right? Most successful people in life are like good at having delayed gratification, and not in falling for instant gratification.
mhm,
Sure, like we can talk about that or not talk about that. But in general, what I mean is that when I have a decision to make, let's say a health decision, like joining a gym, or building good habits for yourself, right? Working out, there are systems you can use to build good habits in your life.
mhm,
It's not as hard as people think it is. But what happens is every year, in January, on January 1st, we make a resolution, but we don't build any habits around it. and by January 7th we are done.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually go to the gym. Gym
Mm-hmm.
memberships soar during December and January, and then they suddenly fall. And even people who have paid for it, they don't go to the gym anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I should be like rationally able to figure out that, okay, if I need to lose X amount of weight, I need to eat this, I need to do this workout, and I need to do this for Y amount of time. And if I do it, I'll get the results. Right. Uh, but for them, it's like a magic wand. I sign up for a gym membership and I've lost 10 kgs. But that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that is the kind of like simple critical. This is a space level critic. This is a critical thinking. The ability to weigh options that you have, probably.
So let me try to understand what you're saying. So critical thinking is the ability to weigh option, rationally understand the information that is out there. In finance, it
Yes.
could be, what is your monthly mortgage going to be? What is your monthly payment going to be? In health, being that like eating this food or doing gym for 1 hour every day. So like being able to analyze the information to do generate options and or weigh options and pick
Yes.
one based on what?
No, based on what eventually you want to achieve, or based
Oh,
on. Uh,
okay. So let me ask a different question. There is a gym membership. Uh, there's a good friend of yours who goes to gym, and he tells you, "Oh, I started going to gym, and within 3 months I lost this much weight. I think you should also go to gym." And you trust this friend, and you're like, "Okay, makes sense.
yeah.
Let's go talk to what does this entail for me." You go to the gym, the same gym that your friend goes to, and you talk to the trainer there, and the trainer or whoever is at the front desk, and
Yeah.
they tell you, yes, we do programs of this kind, and for some extra charge, we can also give you a nutritionist, and they can tell you
Yes.
what to eat and how to eat and how much to eat. So in this scenario, so let's say you are this person, and you have
Yeah.
this good friend who's giving you good advice, and he took you to the gym, and you spoke to the trainer. The trainer told about some other stories of how folks have lost weight, and
Yeah.
so now you are this person. Now tell me what in this scenario is the critical thinking there. So all the information that is presented to you through your friend who you trust, through the person who's giving you
So,
testimonials of
so
how
knowing
this
that,
works. What is
knowing, first of all, knowing that everybody's body is different,
Mhm.
and if my friend has not lost 10 kgs in 3 months, I'll probably not. I can like overshoot that number. I can lose 5 kgs. I can lose 3 kgs. Just knowing, not that my results are going to be different because my body is different. My body fat is different. At what how my metabolism works. That's different. I probably uh, basically how the human body functions and how it processes calories, and how muscle building works.
So all of
If I
that,
want to,
all
if
of
I
that.
want to get fit,
Mhm.
no. So if I want to get fit, then I'll figure that stuff out. Before I sign up for a gym or a trainer.
So, so that is interesting. Isn't that the reason why you are getting a trainer? Because so that you don't have to figure
Sure,
out, the trainer will
sure.
help you
So
figure it
then,
out.
then I have to trust the trainer. Yeah, then I have to
Mm-hmm.
trust the trainer. I have to do the background on that trainer specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and be sure. And then they will teach me how I can get fitter. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, I have to know that results are dependent on how much I do the work. Right.
I think,
Uh,
don't you know that, like, and will not your trainer, will not your friend tell you
so
that?
the instant gratification part of it is that when you're being sold, you're sold in a way that the moment you make the payment, you've lost your weight, lost all the weight that you want to, or before, like you feel that swipe my credit card and now I'm done. Uh, uh, right.
Hmm.
That's the cognitive bias. That is not that is not the rational critical thinking that's going on. That's the instant gratification we get, that okay, now we have taken a positive step towards our health.
Okay.
But
But
that is just the first step. Then
taking a
now you have to
positive
follow
step.
through.
Yeah. So
No,
taking a
that's good.
positive step is the thing, right? Yeah. I'm still, I think I'm struggling here. I am not sure
Okay.
I understand in this scenario that seems like you have to make decisions. What is a bad decision? What is a good, like, if you were to
So
apply critical
yeah,
thinking in this scenario,
yeah,
what would look like good critical thinking and what would look like bad critical
sure. So bad critical thinking is falling for the sales and signing up and never going back. Good critical thinking is building systems around your life that enable you to actually go to the gym every day, and do the workout that is necessary, and eat the right food, store the right food in your fridge, cook the right food in the right amount, and everything that needs to happen, so that you don't eat unhealthy, like shop the right stuff at the grocery store, not buy more ice creams and chocolates, yeah.
I think I'm getting the point, but the two scenarios that you're comparing,
Yeah.
I, I don't hear thinking parts there. What I hear is in one part, you're talking about an outcome that you've joined the gym and not gone there. And the other part, you're talking about the actions taken here, right?
Yeah, so
And
that part is not taking these actions, basically.
right. So
That part is not taking these actions.
what I'm really pushing you for is not the outcomes. The outcomes are at the end product.
Sure.
If you're talking about critical thinking, then you're saying that a person who thinks critically will end up taking these building systems, these things. And a person who doesn't
Yes.
do critical thinking will not end up looking that. My question is
Yes.
not what those solutions are, because the solutions can change in different situations. My question
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what happened differently in the good critical thinker's mind that they led to this versus in the poor critical thinker's mind that led to the other outcome. So I understand the comparison that you're making, but you're still talking in outcomes, right? So this, to put it in a very sort of like, it
That's
does not,
what we have to teach.
no, so
That's what you have to teach
and
people, right?
this is where I'm pushing
Yeah.
you, that unless
Okay.
you know what are you exactly trying to teach, you are no different from, you're trying to convince people that you should have critical thinking without anybody understanding what critical thinking is.
So right. So all the literature that's out there around influence, around cognitive biases, around building habits, around building systems, all that literature we only read in either in academic journals, or maybe pop science books, or in management schools.
Mhm,
Right. That's where this knowledge comes from. That's what ultimately a good physical trainer will teach you if you go to the gym, that
mhm,
that coming to the gym is only one part of it. You have to like design your entire life around this pursuit,
mhm,
and these are the steps that you can take
mhm,
to make this happen.
mhm,
I think so that literature is already there, that research is already there, in the behavioral science world, that can
mhm,
give people the necessary information and the actions they need to take to make the right decisions
mhm,
at any point in life. It's
mhm.
just that it is too inaccessible, or like most people don't know about it,
No, but you
or,
told
or
me
it
that
is
it is
only taught in.
available everywhere. It is available
No, so
everywhere. What is the inaccessibility?
in the sense that nobody's going to read a book, right? Nobody's going to go out there and read Atomic Habits. We might as well just teach them in grad school. Uh,
So that so this is a very funny place that you've put me in, and let me try to tell you why it is a funny place. Because on one side you're saying nobody's going to read these things, right? And on the other side you're saying that we have to have people be responsible. And so you're attributing two opposing qualities to every student. One is
yes,
that they don't want to do the hard work,
Because they haven't been taught to do the hard work.
And so
So
that is why
if
this
you
is
teach them, if you teach them, then they'll make better decisions throughout life.
okay.
That's the thing, right? If you teach them these concepts early on in life,
Mm-hmm.
then they're more likely to read more scientific content, or more actually do the hard work of reading a good book, and understanding what they can learn from it.
Okay.
But if you don't teach them from a systematic perspective, from an education system's perspective, then they'll probably never take the leap of going out there and reading a book like Thinking Fast and Slow, or Atomic Habits, or Nudge, or Predictively Rational. Like there's hundreds of books
Mm-hmm.
around these ideas. Just that a common person like me can read. Somebody who is an academic like you can reach like deeper research, and if people are more curious, they can go deeper into these ideas, and educate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But at a very base level, like, you need these ideas to be taught very, very early on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Okay. So there are like 6 different directions I can currently think of taking, which might not be productive. So let me start raising a few things and putting them off and pick one that I think would be most
yeah,
helpful
yeah,
for the next some minutes. So on one end, I want to say this idea of popular science books that you can read, and if you help kids understand this sooner, they'll go and seek out all of these. There is a problem in that. The problem
that's
is,
right. I'm not saying that they should seek out. I'm saying
mm,
don't
mm,
kids don't need to read pop science books. I'm
mm,
saying the knowledge that is there in whatever you're teaching in grad school, right? There is a
mhm.
version of it that can be whatever you're teaching in management school, whatever influence techniques, negotiation techniques that you're teaching.
Mhm.
There's a version of it that can be taught in undergrad, that
Okay.
can be taught at high school. That there is a
Mhm.
version of it that can be taught. That's all
Okay.
I'm saying. Whether they go out there and actually read those books or not, that's completely up to them. That's a personal choice. That's okay.
Mhm.
I'm not advocating those books.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
advocating the theories and the research behind those books.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't get me wrong there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Here's I'll push you. Even at the level of like undergrads or MBAs who are business majors, and I am teaching these courses, I come out and tell them that I will talk about research. I will talk about so you can, and there are a whole bunch of students who've read popular science books and they come to me and say that, oh, this technique is mentioned in this book, and all those things. And
Yeah.
I said, but most popular science books are actually deploying those exact techniques to convince you that it is an exciting story,
Sure.
but
Sure. Sure.
they're
Sure.
really making a bigger deal of what evidence we actually have. So they're
Sure.
popular for a reason and not necessarily accurate to what we know. But even if I tell you what is accurate, I can also tell you, given the nature of behavioral sciences and social sciences, as the world
Yes.
changes, those outcomes will not survive whatever that
Yes.
research tells you. So, what
Yes.
I want to teach you is not information based. So, all critical thinking currently is being, at least in this conversation, is being focused at, or take the information and rationally
Sure.
dissect the information. I'm saying
Sure.
that that itself is a problem
Okay.
because the world is changing. If you take the information and say, oh, research blah 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 says we should do this, and you go ahead and do it, it's not that straightforward. That research was done in a
So
specific way, and you are not applying
sure,
that
there
to
is a sure, sure, sure. No,
so
no, I understand. There's a huge like replication crisis
no.
going on in behavioral
I'm
science.
so that is an
Yeah, yeah,
encapsulated thing, and I'm not talking just
yeah.
about replication crisis. Replication crisis
Sure.
is fundamentally something very different. I'm not trying to go at that
Okay.
place.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say that is, even if those were not, even if those studies are replicable, right? I'm saying that they would stop being replicable in some number of years.
Sure.
And what I'm also fundamentally saying is, even if they are replicated, the conditions under which they are replicated are not the conditions under which you have to apply them. And given the nature of how these things are very fluid, and every small change in your
Sure.
situation
Sure.
can change whether that rule applies or not.
Sure.
So for example, you could be highly influenced by your boss, or
Yeah.
any authority figure, but if there are
Yes.
50 of you, and they're fighting with each other, you might not be influenced by their boss, right? So like it's
Sure.
the same situation. If it is even slightly different, those outcomes will not apply. So just being able to consume a lot of information and
It's
critically separate out
not.
that, oh, this is good, this is bad, and do the calculations is not really so. Like, what
So
you
how do
have,
you teach critical thinking?
right?
It's not about just consuming. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm saying health is very simple. Eat the right food. Do the work out regularly. That doesn't change whatever. Like it has been
No,
true for.
I can say that it will change. You're
Okay.
talking about,
How will that change?
you're talking about a standard person, right? If somebody is a diabetic,
Sure.
right,
Sure.
what their good food is very different from what your good food is, right?
Sure. So that's why the health is very it's very personal. It's different
Uh-huh.
for
and
everybody.
and
But th- uh,
so, and that is why it
okay.
is very easy. So
Yeah.
this is where
Sure.
I'm putting, right?
Sure.
It is very hard to it is very easy to cop out and use words that are subjective words. So work out regularly and eat good food. What you've done
Mhm.
is regular and good are both now subjective to the person, right? It is
Yes.
very easy for us to say that, oh, that's the basic, that's the simplest. But for a person, when it becomes personal, not generic,
Yes.
the good and the regular and what is in the workout has to be defined. And that definition cannot come from 100 amount of external analysis that becomes information. It has to come from internal experiment, personal experiment.
I'm not saying consume more.
Mhm,
I'm saying know that you're going through this. If you are a diabetic, you need to take care of your own health. Like,
mhm, mhm,
uh, right? That is critical thinking. Like, you don't want to die a diabetic. Like, you don't want to die early because of diabetes and like not take any action.
mhm.
Uh, it is not about consumption. It is about taking informed decisions.
Right.
Uh,
What is the
Consumption is not going
information?
to solve your problems.
Where is this information coming from? I think I'm really pushing you for that. Taking informed
Okay.
decisions, the examples that you're giving is all of this information is coming from the outside. What I'm saying is all information that comes from the outside has to be only a starting point. You cannot
Yeah.
take decisions on that information. You can only treat it as a personal hypothesis, which is like,
Sure.
oh, it seems like people with my type of diabetes, my type of body weight, my type of age group tend to do well if they do these four workouts.
Sure.
That is not where your job stops. That is where your job begins,
Begins. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it is not about just, oh, I have to do it regularly. It is also now about, now let me find information, or rather, let me generate information through my actions on that. And then, so critical thinking is
Yes.
now I'm putting it very closer to, it is not about consuming information. It is about the scientific process. Okay. It
Yes.
is about
Yes. Yes. It
having
is.
a reasonable hypothesis, being able to
Yes.
run that as an experiment. Let's try XYZ, being able to
Yes.
now say that, oh, if I did XYZ, this is what happened. So being able to understand what you did, under what circumstances, this was the outcome, comparing it to what your expectation was. And then in the next cycle being, now let's generate a new hypothesis. If this is working, let me continue it and change this one other part, or change this other part. That will make it better.
Yes.
So at no
Yes.
point, so one way of thinking is that at every cycle you are generating new information, and it will be like, this is it. And now I'll stop thinking and I'll just keep doing it. Right. So in your explanation also, you're talking about the final outcome behavior, that you have to go to gym every day. No,
Sure.
no,
Sure.
you don't
Sure.
have to.
Sure.
You don't have to go to
Yeah.
gym
Yeah.
every day, right? If you
Yeah. It's
understand how your
personal.
body is working,
Yeah.
and then you have to be like, do I need to go to gym today? Do I? And if I'm going, what is it that I'm trying to do? So it is critical thinking is an active thinking process. It is not a
Got it.
final decision process. And
Completely agree.
an active thinking process requires experimentation. It
Sure.
suppresses final results,
Got
which
it.
is, if your mom tells you eat your greens, if you tell your kid eat your greens, it is a good way in which you're teaching your kid how to respect authority because they cannot understand. But at a certain age, they'll start to understand and they would
Yes.
want to experiment that I want to eat ice cream for dinner. Now is the hard part. Will you allow them or will you not allow them? Because if you don't allow them, what you've taught them is critical thinking is bogus. You need to respect authority. I'm
Yes.
not saying that you are not right,
Yes.
right? And I'm not saying,
But we need them to run their own experiments, figure out their own results, and yeah, and this is what I meant by, like,
okay,
this is also
okay.
like in the back of my head as well. I'm not arguing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like consumption is at the first step, and like information is the first step, and then the critical thinking needs to, like, I totally endorse the scientific method. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is how, that is what I
Mm-hmm.
meant basically.
Okay. Okay.
About, I just not, I'm not academic. I wasn't able to like put that into
No,
words.
no, I'm not
Like
faulting you.
I
I'm
try
not.
to like take most of my decisions like that in life. I just that I don't know how to express
And
this.
that is perfectly fine. That is why we are having this
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
And
Yes, yes,
it
yes,
is part of the problem. If most people don't
yes.
know how to express it, how do you expect them to teach it
So
or
that's where the
learn
education
it?
system needs to come in, where high like where people know how to express it. They are
Mhm,
already teaching it
mhm,
but at a very niche, at a very, in a very specific class that's happening somewhere.
mhm.
Like, how do we bring that to the masses?
Okay, so let's push on that. And I do want to, if not today, I see the time. If not today, I do want to
Yes,
have a discussion about what is the distinction between critical thinking and independent thinking. Uh,
yes, yes,
but
yes.
but
We
but
need
we
that.
can
That's a separate
hmm,
conversation. Probably we
hmm,
should have next
hmm.
week. Yeah.
And the question that we should be asking is, what are we really after when we talk about deep good life skills? Is it critical thinking or is it critical thinking and independent thinking? Are they the same? Are
Yes.
they different? Which one do we really
Yes.
need? So okay, so like I don't want to miss out on this, so let's put a pin on it and we can
Yes. Yes. Yes.
come
Yes.
back to it when the time is right. Uh,
Yes.
Now to pushing two. Now you immediately package this as, oh, this is exactly the kind of thinking process I'm trying to say, and this needs to be taught in school.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the funny thing about life skills is that you can never teach them in a sandbox. You can teach them
Yeah.
in a sandbox, but they never apply in a sandbox. A student, a human, is always learning life and is always applying life
Yes.
skills. It is a
Yes.
never-ending, non-stop, discontinuous process. The only
Sure.
time you stop learning is when you stop engaging with your own thought process, right? So when you stop
Right.
thinking and simply mirroring or simply, going about uh, delegating your decision making to somebody else is when you are personally not learning life skills. I would argue that that is a life skill that you're learning, that I will just delegate it. I'll not take hard, right? So in that sense, anytime you are conscious and you are making a decision or you are choosing not to make a decision, you are, irrespective of the situation, learning something about your life skills, modifying or either honing your critical thinking or blunting your critical thinking every
Hmm.
decision you make. So
Yes. Yes.
the
Yes.
idea that you can teach it in a school makes sense, but the idea or the expectation that teaching it in a school will allow it to survive or thrive in every individual is bogus.
No.
Because
Sure.
if you teach them, I can teach you critical thinking in the class. We'll do science experiments and we'll do this, and it's a very well designed course
Yeah.
and you do all of it. The students do fantastic at it. But you are never allowed to exercise it.
No. Yeah. No. No. I get it. We
Okay.
have to. We still have to. Yeah.
So the thing that you learn is, oh, there is this scientific process. I have neatly packaged it in a box. And when I'm back in the laboratory, I'll bring it out, open it, and apply it. But when I'm out there in the world, talking to my mom, dad, talking to my friends, talking to my grandparents, talking to strangers, talking to my teacher, talking to my principal, uh, in a job, talking to my boss, in all of those places, critical thinking does not apply. Authority, trust, uh, and all those different forms of biases apply. So the question, are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Critical thinking or life
Yeah,
is you can teach it, but it does not guarantee that it applies and it survives. It can
I
become a
agree.
box to box.
But
Also,
it, but that's still that holds true for teaching it in a B school as well, right? But you still teach it, and you hope that
yeah.
the student will learn it and apply it when he goes out there into the world and runs a company or manages a team of people, right? You
Mhm.
It's the same principle that
So I,
you
I
are.
think here's the piece, and I I cannot I cannot keep it separate anymore. So critical thinking at the end of the day is a critical thinking at the end of the day is still a technique of how you analyze the world. It is like critically,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It is not about why you choose to think critically. So the reason, so like here's the thing: you taught your kid critical thinking, but the day he turns back home and applies it to you or your decision making, you shut them out. Your son now has two choices: to
Yes.
learn the lesson of authority and be like, that's how it is, or
Hmm.
make the choice of, I have to raise my voice and be like, this is not working.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
raising of the voice can go in two ways. I will fight and I will abuse, or I will throw a tantrum, whichever. Or it will be trying to reason with you why this does not apply or why this is not, like, you yourself are not walking your talk, right?
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
And put in a different context, what you are trying to tell your kid is, do as I tell, not do as I do,
Do as I do. Yeah.
right? And your kid is trying to tell you, I'm trying to do as you do, but you're
Yes.
telling me to do something different. All right.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying what you would do here. What I'm saying is, in your kid's mind, he has three choices, three directions to go in. One is learn the lesson of authority. The other is learn the lesson of abusive outcome, that I am independent. I want to express my independence. I am not going to I'm going to reject your authority, right? But the rejection not in the sense of choosing critical thinking, but rejection in a violent way. It could be a shouting depending on their age, or leaving the house and going other thing, or like simply saying silent. They are all expressions, but the underlying choice of how they're handling the situation is not, like, is a rejection of authority in a violence, in some form of violence. But the third one is application of critical thinking. My question to you is, where does that choice come from, and how does it get enacted? Why should a child continue to choose applying critical thinking, and how do you teach that ability? And the reason I'm
Yes.
saying that I cannot keep it separate so far is the idea of all forms of critical thinking are different from independent thinking. So critical thinking is still under the cap of somebody has to choose to apply critical
Yes.
thinking.
From the choices that they get.
Right.
I think, yeah, I think choice design is a
No,
big
no, not
issue
so. So
where,
I'm trying to push you. It is not from the choices that they get. It is about
yeah,
understanding that they always have more choices than the choices that they're given. Critical thinking could
yes,
be is you're analyzing your external environment, some form of situation, and weighing ups and downs and running your experiments. But you have never chosen the goal of why are you engaged in this activity,
yes,
right?
yes,
The ability to go from what I would call first principles in decision making, not first principles in solving physics problems, but first principle in decision making, or first principles approach to being a human, is
yes,
the first choice you have to make is, what do you want to engage in, and what are the values through which you will engage in them. I'm not saying you have to be correct.
yes,
I'm saying being aware that that is the first decision you have to make.
Yes.
And that would be independent thinking.
Yes.
Critical thinking is about information and experimenting with information to find the right fit
Yes.
with the
Yes.
situation.
Yes. Yes.
Independent thinking is about values. It is not
Yes.
about finding fit with the situation, but finding whether the situation is worth engaging with.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if so, how?
Yes.
And that's a
So I
fairly
wanted to
different life skills.
go there, yeah, because independent thinking is a larger conversation that we need to have, and so I wanted to go there later probably.
Mm-hmm.
And critical thinking is like something, this scientific method you can apply to every decision in your life
Mm-hmm.
that you take, and it will help you at every stage. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I thought that everybody should ultimately at some point be taught critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
uh, of course they should also be taught independent thinking. And I don't even know how that can be taught. At least with critical thinking I know that it can be taught in a sandbox, and then you can start
So
experimenting and applying it.
I am saying that for the most part, our modern education system has reached a level that most people are taught critical thinking and they know how to do critical thinking. And if I were to reframe all the
Do
problems that we
they?
are talking about, yeah, absolutely. And so hear me out. My hypothesis would be it's not that they don't know how to do critical thinking. It is just that they have been conditioned into applying critical thinking only to certain aspects of their life.
Sure.
Critical thinking should be a transferable skill and it should be transferred,
Yes. Yes.
but it is not because they are not
Hmm.
thinking independently. Or put differently, so again, we are not trying to solve the problem right now, we are trying to understand the problem. So
Hmm.
one way of stating the problem is you know how to think critically about designing a bridge.
Hmm.
You can
Okay.
you can identify what are the problems, what are the situations that you have to take care of. You have to look under the soil, you have to
Sure.
understand the weight,
Sure.
you have to apply these equations. And this is not about whether your ability to apply the equation. It is like you have critical understanding of if the wind speed is this high, you have to do this. You're willing to run the
Yes.
experiment, you're willing to generate simulations to solve that problem. Even in software
Yes.
engineering, you are
Yes.
able to identify bugs. You're able to
Yes.
experiment by changing things, by adding print statements. You're able to see the logic that is happening outside. You're able to simulate that logic in your head and change things, apply those changes, and make it work.
Right. Right. Right.
Most of the people who are trained to be good workers have critical thinking.
Why don't we apply them to our life, to our life skills?
Good. Now we are getting at the question. And that is like, we have to first identify the problem. So the problem is not really critical thinking. The problem is
Yes.
we are put in a place where either we don't know or we don't think we can apply critical thinking to other aspects of our life. So again, I want to separate this out and feel free to disagree. I am saying most people can do critical thinking. It is not a skill that
Hmm.
is missing. I'm saying
No, I understand that.
the exact way, like we talked about the kid, they put it in a box and they only open that critical thinking box in certain situations because they
Right.
think they're allowed to do it there. And that is
Right.
what makes
Right.
them successful. That is what gives them good salaries. So that is why they'll do it in it is like a job interview that you know certain concepts only for the job interview. It is like an
Yeah.
exam that you know certain concepts only for the exam. You never actually apply
Yes.
them in life on your everyday things because
Yes.
you learned something about life that makes you think that critical thinking is good and everything, but it does not apply to life.
Hmm.
And this is where I'm pushing for the idea of, so if it is not critical thinking, then it is something else. And I have already started to define in the direction of what is
Yes.
independent
Yes.
thinking.
Yes.
And
But I still think that
yeah, go
if
ahead.
we teach critical thinking in the context of life as well,
Mm-hmm.
like teaching scientific experiment,
Mm-hmm.
the scientific method
Mm-hmm.
in the context of life itself,
Mm-hmm.
there can be a curriculum that will be that will really help many people take more,
Okay.
take better decisions in life.
Let's walk through that idea. So I
We
can,
know this problem, right? That people do critical thinking. They use the scientific method in one part of their life, but they don't use it in the another part of their life. We just need to probably tell them that you should. This is how you should think about your health. This is how you should
sure.
think about your money. This is how.
So let's say we tell them.
Yeah.
The problem is not telling them. So let's walk through that
Yeah.
idea. And it's the same situation I want to ask you. Let's say you are supposed to apply critical thinking to your finances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So the problem is not applying critical thinking. You wanted to
Okay.
make certain investments and you said, okay, let's figure out what their returns are, what this is. Let's talk to 15 people.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of information out there to analyze, understand before you make one decision. And then you have
Yes.
to make experiments, which is another decision.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And then will take, let's say, some hours.
Yeah.
If it is an experiment, think of it like it's a recurring meeting. You have to put that many number of hours every so often
Sure.
with some regularity.
Sure.
Now you do that for your health. You do that for your finances. Now you do that for something else. You do that for something else. How many aspects do you have?
Many aspects
Right. So now,
yeah.
very quickly, you will not have enough time. And you will be in analysis paralysis. So there is infinite information. So even to get started, there is infinite information. Even to apply it through some heuristics. So what I'm trying to tell you is heuristics are there for a reason. They help you. That is the strength of being a human. You are able to apply heuristics, learn heuristics and apply them. And they serve you well because they short circuit the cognitive load, so how much information you need to process.
Yes.
The scientific method is there to help you because it helps you find a proper fit. Just like we talk about survival of the fittest, the evolutionary algorithm. It helps you find a fit once you're in a situation. It reduces the cognitive load. None of this allows you to simply say that I can do everything. Then when it comes to what you should do it for and what you should not do it for, you can so one answer that you cannot do it for everything. You're not allowed to have that because you have limited capacity.
Sure.
Now the question comes, what do you apply it for? In what do you spend more time versus less time? This now is, if you understand it, is just like we push the problem one level up. It's the same problem. I'll say apply critical thinking to just your aspects of your life, and we are done.
Yes.
Right? It's not that easy.
Yes.
Now think about it. The number of combinations you have to run to experiment, and that itself now, because it is one level higher, it is now exponentially a bigger information space and experiment space. So
I think you should have the ability to decide that these aspects of my life are very important. This is where I need to make intentional decisions, and I cannot run by heuristics or I cannot run on autopilot, like how the world around me wants me to run. And there are other aspects of my life where I can run on autopilot, and it's okay.
Excellent.
Because I don't have the capacity. I think probably we are pushing into independent thinking.
No, and I'm exactly now at that space where, and like perhaps let's pick up on this thread next time. We're way past the time.
Yes.
Is you have now changed the problem? Like the problem is the same. You've changed the context. Initially, it was if it is personal finance, it could be this. If it is so, we are walking through multiple examples to understand the problem.
Yeah.
Once you understood the problem, we've now only moved it one level up, and you're like, oh, probably we should have an understanding of what are the five aspects, five dimensions that are most important. My question then would be, how do you come to that conclusion? That is an infinite probability. So you cannot simply solve by critical thinking. And the way this happens then is we do the same thing, whatever our parents told us. What is the society telling us? Who is saying what is
Yes.
important? That is where, if you live with the idea of you are a mixture of the top five people you spend your time with, or
Yes.
the top five things you
Yes.
spend your time doing, is that like
Yes.
runners friends are end up being runners, smokers friend end up being
Yes.
smokers, alcoholic uh, friends end up being alcoholics, right? So it is not true all the time, but that is the sort of standard regression to what you get to. And the interesting part is not the standard regression. The interesting part is who are the people who don't end up following these rules. I
Mm.
would argue that those are the people who are independently thinking. If you're independently thinking, it doesn't matter if people around you are
Yes.
smokers, drinkers, good decision makers, bad decision makers. They are on autopilot on certain dimensions and doing this. You are choosing your things. Doesn't mean you are right. Again, I'm not saying that this is better,
Yes.
right? That you're right. Doesn't mean you're not facing problems. But it has more to do with you're making choices based on certain smaller number of criteria. You're not facing the world as a combinatorial problem. So everybody faces the world as a combinatorial problem. Like there's so much information and so many experiments that you can run. We at that point delegate
Mm.
our choices of what is important or what has to be done to our this is beautiful word I had read in one of the books, uh, which was called domestication. So I would say we delegate that to our domestication, which is what did our parents tell us, what did
Yes.
our things are. So which is not any different from authority, but through tradition.
Yes.
In life situations, as to the extent your life situations are going to look identical to your parents' life situations,
Yes.
you will actually succeed. You will save time in not experimenting.
Yeah.
So again, independent thinking is extremely costly. Doesn't mean it is, and that is the reason why it is not always the highest winning strategy, because
Mm.
there will be somebody else who will come up with some type of domestication or some kinds of preconceived notions which will exactly fit the situation, and they will succeed because they are not spending the extra cognitive power trying to figure it out.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
this is what I say, they are succeeding not because they're bound to succeed, they're succeeding because of luck, right?
Sure.
So now this is, it comes closer to what my research area is about, intelligence. And intelligence is, the way you think about intelligence is, or like wisdom, would be your ability to adapt or maintain a level of performance as your situations are changing, or being able to solve many different types of problems.
Mm. Mm.
You can
Mm.
have
Mm.
specialized intelligence, like we already have AI that can play chess and go and all of those things, but
Mm.
they cannot
Mm. Mm.
do art. We have AI that can do some kind of art, but
Art.
it cannot do, the other thing. Humans are general intelligence. A
Yes.
general intelligence, the value of having general intelligence really shines when you can do multiple different types of things. Does not
Yes.
mean you are the best at all kinds of things,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
your
Sure.
ability to adapt is the most
I
important
think
part of what,
adaptability is, yes.
right?
Uh,
And
yeah.
adaptability then can be of, is it informational adaptability? And if the
Yes.
world that you are in is fairly bounded, then just with critical thinking you can adapt. But the world that we live in is not bounded, and just with critical
Yes.
thinking you cannot adapt. With critical thinking you can be a very good worker that somebody else will take advantage of, because they know how you think critically. So the whole idea of these nudges, like this is also part of my research area.
Yes.
So the whole idea of nudges is essentially driven by the fact that humans have biases and we can leverage those
Yes.
biases to get the outcomes that we want.
Yes.
I am not saying whether nudges will be applied in a good or a bad way. They can be applied in both ways. What I'm saying is the power to nudge you is now in somebody else's hands.
What I'm saying is, we give that power to every individual to nudge themselves into taking the right decisions
No,
whenever like how do we do that? How do we
right.
bring that to the masses?
Yes, so not disagreeing. And that the how do we bring that is now a conversation of how do we change the education system. So first
Yes.
part is understanding what is the life skill that we want everyone to have. It is not critical
Yes.
thinking. And if you were thinking of critical thinking, I would argue that everybody already a whole big chunk has it, or
So
the current
applying
education
critical
system.
thinking, applying scientific method to your life, to the things that matter the most in life,
Right.
to your basic health, wealth, and relationships, basically.
So I would push to be at the level of the way we were discussing, having independent thinking to be able to apply
Okay.
it everywhere would also mean that you are no more being educated to or groomed to become a consumer and a worker. You are being
Yes.
groomed to become a human, a generally intelligent, independent thinking human, which is, I think for me, all
Yes.
three words now mean the same thing. A human is
Mm.
generally intelligent and is independent thinking. A
Yes.
consumer, a consumer is critical thinking, right? And a worker. A worker is
Yes.
a critical thinking. A consumer is a critical thinking. So they can have levels. Some make poor choices, some make good choices. But at the end of the day, all of their choices
You still are bounded.
are bounded. They're not independent. They're being
Yes.
bounded by
Yes.
society.
Yes.
And that is the problem. So this is where I want to bring it back to the initial conversation where we started off is the responsibility of making good choices
Mm.
entirely on the shoulders of an individual. Because
Mm.
here is a solution. If the society chooses not to be malicious to individuals, individuals don't really have to be independent thinking, and they'll still get the good outcomes that you're talking about,
Yes,
right?
but
I
how
I am not
do
advocating
we
for it.
change
I'm just saying
society?
that
No,
if
I
the
get it.
outcome that you're
I
looking for is good health, good finance, all of those things, it can still be solved without having humans to be independent thinking. Just change the society, right? It's
without
a hard
having humans
problem,
to be critical thinking even. Yeah.
perhaps, but then you'll really need to change the society to in a completely different direction, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I would say, so this is now going in a different direction and probably
Yeah.
alluding to the fourth episode that we want to do on,
Yeah.
self-expression. What does it mean to be a good human? I would
Yes.
say that
Yes.
you can simplify the problem of life skills and have everybody have a good life by doing the hard work of changing the society. But I would push for and ask that, but that does that make the human a good human? Right? Because they don't have self-expression or they don't know that they
Yes.
can be independent.
Yes.
They're not utilizing their deep level features of general intelligence, uh,
Hmm.
which is fairly unique to humans,
Yes.
uh,
That's yeah.
as far as we know.
Probably that is yeah. That is the only thing that differentiates us from animals. Probably.
Hmm. So
Uh,
a good question to really like when we think of life skills, it's very easy. And even when we began the conversation in previous when we were talking about jobs, so jobs is thought of in the context of in this society everybody has to work. And we came
hmm.
to the conclusion that the education system shouldn't be talking about jobs, it should be talking about skills. The same way
Yes.
we talked about life skills, and the motivating factor behind life skills was you should have your finances sorted out, you should have your health sorted out, you should have these. There are some basics about your life that you should have sorted out.
Yes.
But that is also driven by the fact that our current society is messing them up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So if the current society stops messing them up, you can still like then the question will be so do you not need critical thinking and independent thinking, right? And that would essentially this is something that we can tackle in a future episode
Yes.
as
Yes.
the
Yes.
fourth kind of education of like the self-expression, your ability to
Yes.
maximize your potential and like
How to become
explore
a
it.
yeah, how to become a independent thinking uh, s- human.
Yeah, how to explore your
Uh,
humanity, how to be a full human, like and
uh,
knowing figuring out what does it mean to be that.
Probably yeah, closing very close to like self-actualization that Maslow talks about.
Perhaps
Probably
I have never
in
understood
his hand.
Maslow's self-actualization. Uh, it seems to be a great thing to be sitting on top, but never understood what that
You understand when you get there. That's the trick.
is. But that's exactly like selling a gym membership. That you lose weight when
Yes,
you get
yes,
there. You've not really
yes,
sold
yes,
anything.
yes. Exactly, exactly, exactly.
You've
No, no,
simply
yeah, yeah. We can get into Maslow. Yeah, we can get into Maslow next week. And we can get into more importantly, we'll get into independent thinking. I think a lot of our problems can be solved if we just start to think independently. I didn't want to tackle that this week because I want people to understand the value of critical thinking and the scientific method, and how they can apply it to every aspect of their life, not just not just their trades where they apply it.
Mhm.
But the broader umbrella is the more important probably piece is independent thing, being able to understanding the choices that you are given are are bounded by, and you are being given these choices, but actually your possibilities are unbounded.
Mhm.
And you can choose to have choices out of these bounds. And we'll go deeper into independent thinking and self-expression
Mhm.
next week. For
Awesome.
today, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Pranav, for a very very interesting conversation.
Yeah, no, this was a fun
Thanks a lot.
conversation. I couldn't get myself to stop. So awesome.
Likewise, likewise.
Let's
Bye,
continue next time.
bye, guys. Have a nice day. Good night, good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
All
Cheers.
right.
Bye.
Good day, everyone. Bye bye.